right now. Someone you trust completely is going to betray you. Your stable job is going to disappear. That person who promised forever is going to leave. And on that day, when your carefully constructed support system collapses like a house of cards, you're going to realize you have absolutely no foundation underneath. This isn't pessimism. This is statistical reality. The average American will experience 7 major life disruptions before age 50. Job loss, relationship endings, deaths, relocations, health crises. And here's the part that will terrify you. 81% of people admit they're completely unprepared to handle life independently when these disruptions hit. They've spent decades building their entire existence around other people's presence, other people's money, other people's approval. So when those people vanish, and they will vanish, these individuals don't just struggle, they completely disintegrate. The question you need to ask yourself right now is brutally simple. Are you one of them? Your bank account hits zero. Your phone stops ringing. The person you thought would always be there just walked out the door. And suddenly, in that cold, quiet moment, you realize something terrifying. You have absolutely no idea how to handle life on your own. This happens to millions of people every single year. Successful professionals, intelligent individuals, people with college degrees and impressive resumes, they all hit a wall when their support system crumbles. And here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to discuss. 73% of people admit they couldn't survive financially for more than 3 months without their current support network. 3 months. That's it. 90 days. Between stability and complete collapse. But here's what's even more alarming. Financial dependence is just the surface problem. The real crisis runs much deeper. Most people have never learned to make important decisions without consulting 5 other people. They can't sit alone in a room for an entire evening without feeling anxious. They can't motivate themselves without external cheerleaders. They've built their entire identity around other people's opinions, other people's approval, other people's presence. So what happens when those people disappear? What happens when you lose your job, your relationship ends, your friends move away, or life just decides to strip everything down to you and you alone? Most people panic. They make desperate choices. They cling to toxic relationships because being alone feels worse than being mistreated. They stay in soul-crushing jobs because the fear of figuring things out independently paralyzes them. The ability to survive alone isn't about becoming isolated. It's not about pushing people away or building walls around your heart. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is developing the capacity to stand on your own 2 feet, regardless of your circumstances. It's about building such a strong foundation within yourself that you never again feel desperate, never again feel helpless, never again hand your power over to another human being out of fear. Think about this for a moment. Every single person who has ever achieved anything significant in life had to develop this capability. They had to learn to trust their own judgment. They had to learn to motivate themselves when nobody was watching. They had to learn to handle failure, rejection, and setbacks without falling apart. They had to build an internal strength that didn't depend on favorable circumstances or supportive people. This is the self-reliance principle, and it's the most important skill you will ever develop. Self-reliance means you have the knowledge, the skills, the emotional stability, and the practical capabilities to handle your life effectively without requiring constant input, assistance, or validation from others. It means you can pay your bills, you can make decisions, you can spend time with yourself without discomfort. You can pursue your goals even when everyone around you thinks you're crazy. Here's the distinction that changes everything. There's a massive difference between loneliness and independence. Loneliness is a painful feeling of isolation, a sense that you're disconnected and lacking something essential. Independence is a powerful state of capability, a confidence that you can handle whatever life throws at you. Lonely people need others to feel complete. Independent people choose to connect with others from a position of strength, not desperation. Most people spend their entire lives trapped in dependent thinking patterns. They were raised to believe that needing people is natural, that relying on others is just part of being human, that interdependence is the goal. And while healthy relationships do involve mutual support, there's a critical point everyone misses. You cannot build healthy interdependence on a foundation of desperate dependence. You cannot contribute to a relationship when you're drowning and grabbing onto anyone nearby to stay afloat. Dependent thinking sounds like this. I can't do this without help. What will people think? I need someone to tell me if this is right. I'll wait until I have a partner before I pursue that goal. I can't afford to upset anyone. My happiness depends on their approval. That kind of thinking cripples your potential. It keeps you small. It makes every decision agonizing because you're always calculating how others will react. It turns you into a passenger in your own life, waiting for someone else to drive. Now here's what changes when you embrace total responsibility for your life. Total responsibility means you acknowledge this fundamental truth. You are completely responsible for everything that happens to you from this moment forward. Not your parents, not your boss, not your partner, not the economy, not your circumstances. You. This isn't about blame. This is about power. When you blame others for your problems, you give away your power to fix those problems. When you make excuses, you're literally explaining why you're powerless. When you justify your lack of results, you're building a case for your own limitations. But when you take full responsibility, something magical happens. You suddenly have options. You can change your approach. You can learn new skills. You can make different choices. You can create different results. The moment you stop waiting for someone else to rescue you, you become your own rescuer. This is the foundation of personal power. Personal power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself, your reactions, your choices, your effort, your focus. It's about building such unshakable inner security that external chaos can't destroy your peace. It's about knowing that no matter what happens, you have the capacity to figure it out, work through it, and come out stronger. Most people never build this foundation. They go through life feeling like victims of circumstance, wondering why things never work out, waiting for their lucky break. They don't realize that self-sufficiency is a skill you develop through practice, through facing challenges alone, through proving to yourself repeatedly that you're more capable than you thought. So we find that something like right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You can continue down the path of dependence, hoping that someone will always be there to catch you, or you can start building the skills, the mindset, and the capabilities that make you unstoppable, regardless of who stays or leaves your life. One path leads to anxiety, desperation, and limitation. The other leads to freedom, confidence, and unlimited potential. The question is, which path will you choose? Let's get specific. Let's talk about exactly what you need to master to survive and thrive completely on your own. Because motivation without practical skills is just temporary excitement. You need concrete capabilities that work in the real world when everything's falling apart. First, let's address the foundation of everything, your financial independence. Here's a fact that will shock you. The average person is 3 paychecks away from homelessness. 3. That means if their income stopped today, within 90 days they'd lose everything. Their car, their apartment, their sense of security. Gone. Why? Because they never built a financial buffer. They never created what I call economic self-sufficiency. Economic self-sufficiency starts with one non-negotiable rule. You must have 6 months of living expenses saved in an emergency fund, not invested, not in stocks, not in some retirement account you can't touch, in a savings account you can access tomorrow if needed. This isn't optional, this is survival. Calculate your monthly expenses right now. Rent, food, utilities, transportation, insurance, everything. Multiply that number by 6. That's your target. Now, I know what you're thinking. I can't save that much. My expenses are too high. I don't make enough money. Stop. That's dependent thinking talking. Here's what independent people do. They find a way. They cut expenses. They increase income. They do both simultaneously. They sell things they don't need. They take on extra work temporarily. They stop eating out. They cancel subscriptions. They get serious. But here's what most people miss about financial independence. One income stream is a trap. You need multiple sources of money flowing into your life. Your job is one stream. What's your second stream? What's your third? Maybe it's freelance work on weekends. Maybe it's a small online business. Maybe it's investment income from stocks or real estate. Maybe it's a skill you teach others. The specific source doesn't matter. What matters is this: when you have multiple income streams, losing one doesn't destroy you. That's independence. Living below your means is the next critical piece. Most people expand their lifestyle to match their income. They get a raise, they upgrade their apartment, they get a bonus, they buy a nicer car. They're always operating at maximum capacity, always stretched thin, always one emergency away from disaster. Independent people do the opposite. They earn more, but maintain a modest lifestyle. The gap between what they earn and what they spend becomes their security, their freedom, their options. Now let's talk about something even more important than money: emotional self-sufficiency. This is where most people completely fail. They've outsourced their emotional stability to other people. When someone compliments them, they feel great. When someone criticizes them, they fall apart. When they're in a relationship, they're happy. When they're single, they're miserable. They're emotional puppets, and other people are pulling the strings. Here's what you must understand. Your emotional state is your responsibility. Not your partner's job to make you happy, not your friend's job to cheer you up, not your parents' job to validate you. Yours. You must develop the ability to manage your own emotions, to generate your own good feelings, to maintain your own stability regardless of what's happening around you. How do you do this? You build internal happiness generators. You create routines and practices that consistently elevate your mood. Maybe it's exercise every morning, maybe it's reading for 30 minutes before bed, maybe it's working on a project you care about, maybe it's meditation, music, or time in nature. Whatever works for you, you systematize it, you make it non-negotiable, you stop waiting for good things to happen and start creating your own good feelings. You also must master the art of self-encouragement. When you fail, and you will fail repeatedly, nobody's going to show up at your door with a pep talk. You have to encourage yourself. You have to remind yourself why you started. You have to tell yourself that setbacks are temporary. You have to be your own coach, your own cheerleader, your own source of motivation. This feels awkward at first. Do it anyway. Talk to yourself like you'd talk to someone you love. Give yourself credit for effort. Acknowledge your progress. Refuse to engage in brutal self-criticism. Rejection and criticism will come constantly when you're pursuing anything worthwhile. Independent people don't avoid criticism. They process it alone. They ask themselves, is this feedback accurate and useful? If yes, they extract the lesson and improve. If no, they discard it and move forward. They don't need 3 hours on the phone with a friend processing every negative comment. They handle it internally and keep moving. Now let's address practical life skills. This sounds basic, but pay attention because most people are shockingly incompetent at fundamental life tasks. Can you cook 15 healthy meals without looking up recipes? Can you clean your entire living space efficiently? Can you fix a leaking faucet? Change your tire? Manage your own schedule without missing important deadlines? Can you file your own taxes? Negotiate your own contracts? Handle your own medical appointments? These aren't impressive skills. These are baseline competencies for adult life. But somewhere along the way, people started believing they need specialists for everything. They need someone to help them organize their closet. They need someone to plan their meals. They need someone to tell them how to spend their time. That's absurd. You're capable of far more than you've been led to believe. Here's the principle. Every time you need to do something and your first instinct is to call someone for help, stop. Try to figure it out yourself first. Research it, watch a tutorial, make an attempt. You'll be amazed at what you can accomplish when you actually try instead of immediately outsourcing. The same applies to learning. Independent people are self-directed learners. They don't wait for someone to teach them. They identify what they need to know and they learn it. They read books, they take online courses, they practice skills until they develop competence. They understand that in today's world, the ability to learn anything quickly is more valuable than any specific knowledge you currently possess. Finally, let's talk about decision-making confidence. Indecisive people are dependent people. They need consensus. They need approval. They need someone else to confirm they're making the right choice, so they poll everyone they know, gathering opinions, getting more confused, delaying action, and ultimately making worse decisions because they're trying to please everyone. Here's what independent decision-making looks like. You gather relevant information, you weigh your options, you make the best choice you can with what you know, and you move forward. If it works out, excellent. If it doesn't, you learn and adjust. You don't agonize endlessly. You don't need permission. You trust yourself enough to make imperfect decisions and handle the consequences. Let me tell you about someone who learned this lesson the hardest way possible. His name is Gregory. 10 years ago, Gregory had what looked like a perfect life. Successful career in corporate management, beautiful home, engaged to be married, close-knit family, active social circle. Then, within 6 months, everything collapsed. The company downsized. He lost his job. His fiancée left him for someone else. His father passed away suddenly. His closest friend moved across the country for work. Gregory found himself completely alone for the first time in his adult life, and he discovered something terrifying. He had no idea who he was without all those external structures. He built his entire identity around his job title, his relationship status, his family role, his social connections. Stripped those away and there was nothing solid underneath. He was 37 years old and he'd never actually developed a core sense of self. The first 3 months were brutal. Gregory spent most evenings sitting in his apartment, paralyzed by anxiety, cycling through social media, sending desperate messages to acquaintances, anything to avoid being alone with his thoughts. He made terrible decisions during this period. He drained his savings on pointless purchases. He almost entered a relationship with someone completely wrong for him, just to fill the void. He applied for jobs he didn't want just because waiting alone felt unbearable. Then something shifted. He was sitting in his empty apartment one night, phone in hand, about to call someone, anyone, when he stopped himself. He asked himself a simple question: what am I running from? And the answer hit him hard. Himself. He was running from himself. He was terrified of his own company, his own thoughts, his own capacity to handle life independently that night. Gregory made a decision. He would spend the next 90 days learning to survive alone. Not forever, not as a permanent lifestyle, but as a skill he desperately needed to develop. He set specific goals: build an emergency fund, learn to cook 20 meals, exercise daily without a workout partner, make career decisions without endless consultation, spend entire weekends alone without distraction. The first week was excruciating. The silence felt oppressive. The lack of validation felt like starvation. But he pushed through. He created structure, morning routine, wake up, exercise, healthy breakfast, job search activities, afternoon skill development, reading, learning, evening cooking, reflection, planning the next day. He eliminated social media for 30 days. He stopped reaching out to people unless there was genuine connection, not just desperation. By week 4, something remarkable happened. The panic started fading. The silence became peaceful instead of threatening. He started having ideas again, creative thoughts he'd been too distracted to notice before. He realized he actually enjoyed his own company when he wasn't constantly judging himself or feeling like he should be somewhere else. Week 8 brought the breakthrough. Gregory received 2 job offers on the same day. Old Gregory would have called 10 people, gathered opinions, created spreadsheets, agonized for weeks. New Gregory spent one evening analyzing both offers, identified which aligned better with his actual values and goals, and accepted it the next morning. The decision took 12 hours instead of 12 days, and it felt right because it came from his own judgment. Committee. By day 90, Gregory had transformed. He had 4 months of expenses saved. He'd learned to cook, manage his household, handle his schedule, and make decisions confidently. More importantly, he discovered that being alone wasn't something to fear. It was actually the space where he became strongest. Today, Gregory is remarried, has rebuilt his career, maintains strong friendships. But there's a crucial difference. None of those things are necessary for his well-being. Are speaking with him now from where he's at right now. They enhance his life, but they don't define it. He built a foundation solid enough that if everything disappeared again tomorrow, he'd be okay. That's true independence. Now, here's the paradox that most people never understand. Learning to survive alone actually attracts better relationships into your life. When you're desperate, you attract other desperate people. When you're needy, you repel healthy, independent individuals. But when you're complete on your own, when you've done the work Gregory did, when you genuinely don't need anyone, that's when you become attractive to high-quality people. Think about it. Who do you respect more? Someone who clings to relationships out of fear, who can't function without constant reassurance, who makes every decision based on what others think, or someone who stands solid on their own, who chooses relationships because they want them, not because they need them, who brings strength into connections instead of draining energy from them. The difference between needing people and choosing people is everything. When you need someone, you tolerate mistreatment because losing them feels catastrophic. When you choose someone, you maintain healthy boundaries because you know you'll survive if they leave. Needing creates toxic dynamics. Choosing creates healthy partnerships. This means you can maintain complete independence within relationships. You can be fully committed to someone while remaining fully capable of handling life alone. You can love deeply while keeping your identity intact. You can support others without becoming dependent on them. In fact, the strongest relationships exist between 2 independent people who choose to walk together, not 2 dependent people who cling to each other out of fear. But let's address the elephant in the room, loneliness. Learning to survive alone means confronting loneliness head-on, and that scares people more than anything else. Loneliness feels like physical pain. Studies show it activates the same brain regions as bodily injury. So your fear isn't irrational, it's biological. But here's what you need to understand about loneliness. It's not the enemy. It's a signal. It's your mind telling you that something needs attention. And the solution isn't always adding more people to your life. Sometimes the solution is changing your relationship with solitude itself. Productive solitude is one of the most powerful tools for personal growth that exists. All major achievements, all creative breakthroughs, all deep thinking happens in solitude. You can't develop original ideas in a crowd. You can't hear your own voice when you're constantly surrounded by noise. You can't discover who you really are when you're always playing a role for others. So you must learn to convert loneliness into purposeful alone time when you feel lonely. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone or making plans you don't really want, ask yourself, what does this feeling want me to know? Maybe you need deeper connections, not more surface level interactions. Maybe you need to work on something meaningful. Maybe you need to address internal issues you've been avoiding. Then engage in activities that strengthen you when done alone. Physical exercise. This builds discipline and releases endorphins without requiring anyone else. Reading. This expands your mind and provides company through ideas. Creating something, writing, building, making music, whatever calls to you. Learning a new skill. This proves to yourself that you're growing. Reflection and planning. This gives direction to your life. Build comfort in your own company through deliberate practice. Take yourself to dinner. Go to a movie alone. Travel by yourself. Spend an entire weekend without speaking to anyone. These experiences feel uncomfortable initially, but they're like lifting weights for your independence. Each time you do something alone that you used to think required company, you expand your capacity for self-sufficiency. Now let's talk about crisis management, because this is where independence gets tested. When everything goes wrong simultaneously, you lose your income, you have a health emergency, your car breaks down, your relationship ends. That's when most people completely fall apart. They don't have systems, they don't have protocols, they just react emotionally and make everything worse. Independent people handle crises differently. They have an emergency response protocol. First, they stabilize their emotions. They take 24 hours to process the shock without making major decisions. They breathe, they sleep, they clear their heads. Second, they assess the situation objectively. What exactly is wrong? What are the facts versus the fears? Third, they prioritize what needs immediate attention, what can wait. Fourth, they take action on the most critical item. Not everything at once. One thing, then the next thing during crisis. You do need strategic networking. Notice I didn't say you need to become dependent on others. Strategic networking means you've built relationships during good times, so you have options during bad times. You know who to call for specific types of help, but you're not desperately begging. You're making strategic requests from a position of mutual respect. After a crisis comes recovery and resilience building. Most people waste their pain. They go through something terrible, survive it, then immediately try to forget it happened. Independent people extract every lesson. They ask, what did this teach me? What do I need to change so this doesn't happen again? How can I be better prepared next time? They document their crisis response, note what worked and what didn't, and create better systems. This brings us to advanced self-leadership. At this level, you become your own mentor and coach. You set ambitious goals without needing external pressure. You hold yourself accountable without public declarations. You track your progress privately. You celebrate your wins even when nobody else notices. Here's how this works practically. Every Sunday evening, you review your week and plan the next one. You ask yourself, what did I accomplish? Where did I fall short? What needs to adjust? What are my priorities for the coming week? You don't need a life coach for this. You don't need an accountability partner. You develop the discipline to coach yourself. You also create self-accountability systems. Maybe it's a private journal where you track commitments. Maybe it's a spreadsheet showing your goals and progress. Maybe it's a daily checklist. The format doesn't matter. What matters is you've created structure that works even when nobody's watching. Let's address the spiritual dimension of surviving alone, because this is what gives everything else meaning. When you strip away other people's expectations, when you stop performing for an audience, when you sit in complete solitude, you're forced to confront fundamental questions. Why am I here? What actually matters to me? What kind of person do I want to be? What legacy do I want to leave? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're essential. Most people avoid them their entire lives by staying busy and surrounded. But developing your personal philosophy, your core values, your sense of purpose, this only happens in solitude. This is where you discover what you believe, not what you've been told to believe. Inner peace cultivation comes from this spiritual work. When you know who you are, what you stand for, and where you're going, external chaos can't shake you. Your peace comes from internal alignment, not external circumstances. You can lose everything and still maintain your center, because your center isn't dependent on anything outside yourself. Now let me give you a practical 90-day transformation plan. Week 1 through 4, foundation building. Create your emergency fund plan. Develop your morning routine. Start exercising daily. Learn basic cooking and household management. Practice making small decisions without consultation. Spend one evening each week completely alone doing something constructive. Week 5 through 8, skill acquisition focus. Identify 3 practical skills you need to learn. Maybe it's financial management, maybe it's a professional skill, maybe it's fixing things around your home. Dedicate 1 hour daily to learning. Take yourself on solo activities, dinner, movie, day trip. Journal about your experiences with solitude. Notice when you reach for your phone out of discomfort and choose a different response. Week 9 through 12, testing and refinement. Make a significant decision independently. Handle a challenge without immediately asking for help. Spend an entire weekend alone productively. Assess your progress honestly. What's improved? What still needs work? Adjust your systems based on what you've learned.